The night of the 13th of March 1964, New York was still awake. From above, the city was a glowing vein, streaks of light running through Manhattan, pouring into Queens, spreading out to the suburbs. Amidst the sea of light, there was a small, hidden corner where the noise was quiet. Kew Gardens, a quiet residential area where people believed they were separated from the frenzy of the city. In the midst of this space, Kitty Genovese, 28, drove her small red Fiat home after her last shift. She locked the door of the bar, Ev's 11th hour, said goodbye to the cleaning staff. At 3 a.m. She was used to this time, used to the chill of the night, to the smell of damp metal in the air, to the way the streetlights turned each building into a dark gold painting. But that night was different. When Kitty pulled up to the curb, her shadow stretched across the slippery pavement, and another shadow moved, just a few meters away. The man was Winston Mosley, 29, an ordinary office worker, married with 2 children. He was quiet during the day, going to work, coming home. At night, he drove around. He liked to watch the lights in the windows, where people thought they were safest. He said later that he wanted to see who was more frightening, him or the city. When Kitty got out of the car, he followed. No voice, no threat, just the sound of heels and heavy breathing. By the time she turned around, the blade was flashing. The first scream was small, muffled. The second was louder, then abruptly stopped. Lights came on in the surrounding apartments. A man stuck his head out an upper-floor window and looked down. A woman doing laundry heard the scream and stopped. Another pulled the curtain, looked out, then closed it. No one came out. Kitty staggered toward her apartment building, more than 30 meters away. Blood dripped down the street. She screamed, "He's killing me!" But the sound was lost in the sound of cars and wind. A door opened. Someone poked their head out, then slammed shut. Mosley stepped back, watching. He walked around the corner, waited. 10 minutes. She still hadn't gotten inside. When Kitty fell, leaning against the steps, he turned. This time no one looked. In the morning the police arrived. Her body was still warm. A handprint slid down the wall. The case was briefly recorded. Victim stabbed multiple times, died at the scene. There was nothing in the report about the 38 witnesses who saw or heard but did not act. That detail came later, when the press broke it, turning it into a symbol. The story went beyond the crime. It became a mirror of the times, an era of urbanization, where people lived closer together but more distant than ever. That year, New York was not just a city of lights, it was a city of fear. The population explosion, rising crime, the Cold War, racial tensions, everything drove people into their own worlds. Doors were double locked. People learned to ignore outside noises as a survival mechanism. Kitty died at the border between 2 worlds, between a sense of community and the isolation of modernity. Psychologists later named the phenomenon the bystander effect. When many people witness the same thing, each individual believes that someone will act. Responsibility is diluted, like light diffused through 1,000 windows. One researcher wrote, "Apathy is not coldness, but a product of the crowd. In the crowd, conscience disappears." When the case was tried, Winston Mosley testified that he was in no hurry. He went home, read about his murder in the newspaper, and then went to work as if nothing had happened. He even said that if anyone came out, he would run. That statement became a second stab, not to the victim, but to society, because it proved that if only one person stepped out, Kitty could live. After the case, America was faced with a question that has never been easy to answer. If you heard someone screaming for help, what would you do? That question quietly trickled into all of popular culture, movies, books, psychology textbooks. It led to reforming the rescue system, the establishment of the 911 emergency number. But that did not ease the collective guilt, because changing the mechanism never changes human nature. In the 1,970 seconds, survivors of Kew Gardens said they could still hear footsteps at night. Not the killers, but the memory. When it was cold, the smell of dew reminded them of that morning. The smell of iron, the smell of plastic, the smell of silence. The old apartments were still there. The new tenants didn't know the story, but some nights they said they felt they were being watched. There were no ghosts, only collective memory, something that doesn't die with us. Kitty Genovese has been the subject of dozens of studies, but in all the theories, people often forget that she was a real person, a gardener who had a girlfriend named Mary, who wanted to open her own shop. She didn't live to be a symbol. She just wanted to go home. Her death has been dissected by the press, dissected by academia, reenacted in movies, and each time, a part of her real self is erased. It's all just a name for an effect. When Bill Genovese, her younger brother, was growing up, he lost both legs in the Vietnam War. In the hospital, he heard his sister's name used as a classroom example. People know her for what they didn't do, not who she was, he said. Years later, he returned to the neighborhood, retracing his steps. The old scene was still there, the building, the stairs, the narrow alley. He stood where she had fallen, his hand on the wall. The floor was still cold, the stone still soaked with moisture. He closed his eyes, and there was only wind. New York had changed. The city was modern, noisy, fast-paced, but the essence was the same. People still clicked on their phones when they saw someone fall, still stood there filming instead of helping. Technology replaced compassion with distance. The bystander effect had only shifted from windows to screens. If Kitty had died today, her video would probably have gone viral, millions of views, thousands of comments, and none of them would have actually helped her. In social psychology classes, Kitty's case was still shown as an illustration. The professor asked, "Why didn't anyone help?" The students were silent. Outside, car horns blared through the streets, just like that morning in 1964. A lecturer once said, "The Kitty Genovese case is not just about evil. It is a test of humanity. When evil appears, who will act?" When night falls in New York, the windows light up, and millions of people huddle behind the lights. In the brightness, there is a dark space, where no one can see anyone else, where each person believes that his or her light is enough to dispel the surrounding darkness. But light alone never creates dawn. At Kew Gardens, a small sign hangs in the parking lot. In memory of Kitty Genovese, may her death remind us to care. No one knows who placed the sign, or who changes the flowers each year. Some nights, when the wind blows from the river, nearby wind chimes tinkle. The clanking of metal is a whisper, not of the dead, but of the city, a reminder that in the silence, sin is always alive. When people stop looking out the windows, the city begins to die. Amagasaki was a normal town in the Kansai region. Small parallel streets, low wooden houses, gray concrete walls. During the day, the trains ran smoothly. The station loudspeakers blared softly. People went to work, went home. Everything went by in an orderly manner. But in an old building on a deserted street near the Mukogawa River, there was one house that people avoided looking at. Whenever they passed by, they walked quickly, heads bowed, as if the fear there was contagious. No one knew what had been going on in that house for 13 years, until a foul smell spread from the basement, and the police arrived. When they opened the door, they found the room dark, damp, smelling of mold and rotting flesh. Deeply worn bindings were on the walls, and dried blood was smeared all over it. In the middle of the room was a rusty iron barrel, its lid welded shut. When they opened it, a poisonous gas smell rose, and inside were human bones. The body count was later determined to be 8, but the fate of the living is more terrifying than death. In 1998, Miyoko Sumida, a Japanese woman in her 40s, moved to Amagasaki. She worked as a housemaid, then lived with relatives. Everyone said she had an unreadable gaze, half gentle, half commanding. Gradually, she pulled everyone in her family into her orbit. First her sister, then her niece, then her distant relatives. They moved in together, worked together, and gradually lost their freedom. No one realized when the control began. She said they had to stick together like a real family. But in that house, family meant something else. The people living with her were gradually cut off from the outside world. Phones were cut off, mail was monitored, work was abandoned. She kept their money, dictated when they ate, slept, talked. Everything happened slowly, quietly, as if the whole house was being sucked into an invisible gravity. When someone resisted, she punished them by having the group return to torture them. No one dared to refuse. One was locked in the basement and disappeared a few weeks later. They said he ran away. A few months later, another disappeared, then another. No one asked, because fear had replaced reason. The basement gradually became its own world. No light, no time. There, the living knew no days. The dead had no names. The damp smell of cement, the sound of dripping water, the scraping of metal, everything blended into a slow, steady rhythm, like the faint heartbeat of the house. The remaining people learned to laugh when ordered, to cry when allowed. She made them believe that if they disobeyed, worse would happen. Fear became a religion. Amagasaki did not notice. The neighborhood was quiet, everyone minding their own business. The people who lived in that house still went out to buy things, said hello to neighbors, smiled. No one noticed anything strange. In Japan, politeness is the best cover for horror. In 2003, a person in the house disappeared, leaving a vague note. The police came to ask, found nothing. Everything was clean and tidy. Miyoko served them tea, bowed, spoke softly. No one suspected. Time passed. Neighbors moved. Newcomers did not know the past. They only heard strange noises late at night, like heavy objects being dragged across the floor. Some said it was a rat. Some said it was not. In 2011, a woman in the house escaped, covered in wounds, and ran out into the street. She told of someone being murdered, locked in the basement. The police came, broke the lock, and the story unfolded like a festering wound. In the files, they found many inexplicable details. The victim's bank account was withdrawn regularly for many years. Insurance policies were transferred to Miyoko's name, and letters were written in the deceased's handwriting. Each piece came together to form a picture that no one wanted to believe. A family controlled, gradually killed, and disappeared in a society that was considered the safest in the world. When the case was brought to light, all of Japan was shocked. A woman without religion, without sect, without a confirmed mental illness, had controlled many people to the point of self-destruction. But what was more haunting was the silence of the surrounding world. Why didn't anyone notice? Didn't anyone hear the cries for help? Did anyone ask why those people disappeared? Because in Japan, not asking is polite. And in that politeness, people can die without anyone knowing. Analysts call this static violence. Violence without sound, without knives, without open bloodshed. It begins with words, with small attempts at control, with a look that makes others afraid. Then, gradually, it becomes a self-operating mechanism. The victim becomes a tool, the outsider becomes a blind person. Miyoko's basement is not just a physical room, it is a metaphor for society. Clean, quiet, closed, and emotionless. When the trial began, Miyoko Sumida refused to testify. She sat still, looked at no one, made no defense. One winter morning, she was found dead in her cell, a suicide by using a towel. Her death closed the case, but not the question. The families of the victims had no funerals. Some bodies were unidentified. The survivors, using false names, moved elsewhere. Amagasaki returned to its former quiet. The house was demolished, the land sold to new people. They built a small apartment building on it, with white walls, glass doors, and trees planted in front of the gate. No one mentioned the basement. Occasionally, people in the area still said that on rainy nights, from the old basement came a sound like the sound of dripping water, regular and distant. They weren't sure if it was real or just their imagination, but no one wanted to stay near it for long. An old neighbor said that in those years, he still saw a dim light behind Miyoko's window every night, like a small fire that never went out. Now, that place is the balcony on the first floor of the apartment building, but the light still peeked through the curtains. In sociological reports, the Amagasaki case is classified as a micro-collapse, when a small system, family, mirrors the entire social structure. There, power is maintained not by violence but by voluntary obedience. People become so silent that they disappear. 13 years, no screams, no escapes. The Japanese have a saying, "What is not spoken does not exist." And in the silence of Amagasaki, those people have truly disappeared from the world. No names, no images, no traces. Only cold walls, cement, and a damp smell remain in the memories of the investigators who went down to that basement. When they left, one of the investigation team said he had never heard such a quiet place. No wind, no rats, just empty space. He said, "I can hear my own heart." Amagasaki is still peaceful today. The streets are neat, the trains run on time, people bow to each other. Beneath the orderliness, memories lie underground, buried like ashes. New apartments have sprung up, their walls painted white, their hallways lit up. But sometimes, late at night, the wind from the river blows, the neon lights reflect off the windows, and someone passing by feels a chill down their spine. Not from the cold, but from the realization that somewhere, silence is still alive. On the afternoon of the 15th of April 1989, the spring sunshine covered the city of Sheffield in a clear yellow. The grass at Hillsborough Stadium was as green as a carpet, and the air was filled with the singing, the drumming, the cheers of people in red shirts, people who believed that today was a day of joy. It was the FA Cup semi-final between Liverpool and Nottingham Forest. From early morning, buses poured into the stadium, carrying the pride of the north of England. Workers, families, children going to see football for the first time. They sang loudly throughout the streets, holding flags, wearing scarves, and believing that here, they belonged together. Outside, black iron fences and small gates like funnel mouths opened to welcome the crowd. Narrow streets, old stands, and thousands of feet jostling. At 2:30, the Leppings Lane stand was almost full, but people kept coming. A wrong decision was made. The big gate opened to release the pressure outside. The crowd poured into the narrow tunnel, which was already full. No one knew that they were entering an invisible trap, where the air disappeared in a matter of minutes. From a distance, the stadium looked brilliant, like any other football afternoon. But in the west stand, the movement began to change. The singing slowed down. The arms raised were no longer cheering. The pressure from behind pushed the people in front against the metal fence, where the wire mesh was tightly woven. Above, the police looked down, believing they were witnessing an excited crowd. No one could hear anything clearly. The shouts mixed with the music, then gradually turned into hoarse screams, then silence. For a few minutes, it was no longer a match. It was a struggle between breath and steel. Those in the middle could not move. Hands tried to find a place to push, to hold, to regain a little air. Their eyes were confused, shattered in the glare. One fell, dragging 10 others with him. Below them, bodies began to pile up. No one could recognize anyone. On the field, players raised their heads. They stopped when they saw that the audience behind the fence was no longer moving. The whistle blew, but not enough to break the silence that had formed. For a few minutes, the sounds of a city were muffled between two breaths. The police still held the fence. No one ordered it to be opened. Pale faces, panicked eyes were pressed against the steel, lips purple. A few people climbed over, fell onto the grass, gasping, trembling. They looked around, not understanding what was happening. Then suddenly, the crowd began to collapse. The door opened, too late. People poured out onto the field like water bursting a dam. Not running, not screaming, just carrying limp bodies in their arms. They put them on the grass, hurriedly performed CPR, pounded their backs, rubbed their chests, cried. In the stands, the remaining people were still glued to the fence, helpless. At 3:06 p.m., the match was canceled. On the field, the grass was stained with blood. In the stands, red shirts drooped, scarves fell from their necks. People tore up billboards to make stretchers, took off their coats to cover the faces of the dead. A man knelt, his hand trembling, placing it on his friend's chest. The wind blew through the steel fence, making a soft whistling sound, like a suffocating breath. Outside the field, the ambulance was blocked at the gate, not knowing the way in. Information was chaotic. Every minute that passed, another person fell silent. That afternoon, 94 people lay there. 2 more died in the hospital. Another person remained in a vegetative state for years, then passed away. 97 people, many of them only 20 years old. The silence of Sheffield that night was unlike any other. The silence of a nation trying to comprehend what had happened. There were no whistles, no celebrations, just drizzle and a cold wind blowing through the empty streets, where red shirts were strewn on the ground. But what was crueler than the disaster was the denial. In the days that followed, the blame spread, that the crowd was too wild, that they had brought their own pain on themselves. No one spoke of the iron railings, the narrow gates, the bad decisions. The city defended itself with oblivion, but in Liverpool, the pain did not go away. On the walls of the red brick houses, the number 97 was painted in white. In Anfield Cathedral, candles were lit each year, a prayer for forgotten justice. Gray-haired mothers sat in the front row, staring into the distance, as if they could still see their children in the crowd, laughing, singing, then disappearing. Many survivors never return to the stadium. They carry the last images of that day as scars in their minds. The clanging of metal, the glare of light, and the eyes staring through the fence. One man said that for 10 years he could not stay in a confined space. Just hearing the crowd made his heart race. A 10-year-old boy escaped that day. 20 years later, he was a father, taking his children to Anfield. When the crowd started singing, he did not sing along. He just stood there, looking away, feeling the breath of the past fill the air. Justice comes slowly, but memories never stop. The files are reopened. The truth slowly emerges that the system was wrong, that the decisions of those in power killed people. But after decades, no one is responsible. There are only tombstones, names carved in stone, and a void in the hearts of the living. In the collective psyche of England, Hillsborough has become a symbol of broken faith. Not just faith in football, but faith in order, in justice, in the system. Every year, in April, at Anfield, tens of thousands of people stand still for a minute of silence. The wind blows through the stands, carrying the sound of flags, the crackling of candles. On the big screen, faces appear, not as numbers, but as people who once laughed, once sang, once believed they would go home after the match. In that silence, people do not hear the sound of the ball, only the sound of breathing. And in each breath was a question that has never been answered. How could such a civilized country let people die at the hands of its own order? Hillsborough is no longer a place for football. It is a memorial, a warning. The grass is still green, but beneath the ground, time remains still, frozen in the afternoon of 1989. The mourners said nothing. They laid flowers, red scarves, and stood still for a long time. The wind blew through the stone wall engraved with names, carrying the cold of Sheffield, carrying the songs that had faded into the air. As the sun set, a golden light shone on the empty stands. An old Liverpool scarf hung on the iron railing, shook slightly, then slipped to the ground. No one picked it up.